Hello everybody and welcome back to today's video. In today's video, I'll be taking a look at my first 2026 House election predictions as of today, June 20th of 2025. Now obviously, the 2026 elections will be dependent on many factors, specifically two things: the generic congressional vote in 2026, as well as President Trump's approval rating. Right now, the 2026 generic ballot shows Democrats up by 2.4%, although there are some outlier polls, with this poll being Democrat plus 7, this poll plus being Democrat plus 9, and this poll being Republican plus 2. The generic consensus is that Democrats are up by about 1 to 2%, which would still be good news for the Republicans because generally Democrats probably need a plus 3 or more to take back the House because that's just how the districts work. But anyways, this shows that the 2026 House elections will definitely be competitive. Now we look at Trump's approval. It's not bad right now. Democrats barely lost the House in 2026 when Biden was down by about 13% in approvals. So if Trump is able to maintain that, he should be fine, and so will the Republicans be. But if that ends up dipping to below 40%, then Democrats are honestly going to probably win the House. So there's a lot of factors that this could be dependent on, but without further ado, let's start off by filling in this map. Now, first off, from the state of Washington, do keep in mind that 218 is the magic number. Democrats need 33 districts. Republicans need a total of, I believe, 20 to win House control. We start off here with Washington here with its 2 districts. Kim Schreier will hang on in the 8th district. I don't think that's too surprising. It's a very Democratic district. Democrats always win it by 6 to 8. Schreier, a longtime incumbent, should be able to win. Now we go to Washington's 3rd district, where it's a bit more interesting. Marie Gutierrez is a Democratic incumbent there. She's a 2-term incumbent. This will be one of the bellwether districts. If Perez wins this district, Democrats could win the House. But if Perez loses, it's pretty much game over for the Democratic Party. Joe Kent is a more MAGA Republican, someone who primaried the incumbent Republican, more moderate Republican there in 2022, lost against Perez in 2022 in the general, lost against Perez in 2024. I believe that if Joe Kent runs again, it's not going to look too good for Perez, for the Republican Party there. If someone more moderate runs, it might not look good for Perez. Right now, I would have to say that Perez is probably a lot stronger than some people imagine. Many people thought Perez was going to lose in 2024. That didn't happen. She overperformed in every county compared to the presidential. I think Perez has a lot more strength than I thought she did. So I'd say that this district right now is tilting Democrat. And it is going to be a bellwether district. If Democrats win it by a lot, they're probably going to win the House. If Democrats lose it by a lot, they're going to lose the House overall. So now we go to the state of Oregon. Oregon has 3 districts that are considered competitive, all 3 of which are likely Democratic. These 2 over here have longtime Democratic incumbents who consistently win. Not surprising they're not that competitive. The district over here, previously held by a Republican in 2024, Lori Chavez de Raymer, the incumbent Republican, lost by 3%, which is no good because she was the incumbent, and the only reason she won in the first place was because who was the candidate the Democrats ran in 2022? I think it was Jamie McClain-Skinner, lost against Chavez de Raymer by 2% because because McClain-Skinner primaried out the incumbent Democratic congressman who was more moderate. There's a backlash to that, and that was why the progressive Democrat from that district lost, and that is why I believe that Lori Chavez de Raymer or another Republican won't have that chance, because as long as Janelle Biden doesn't get primaried, that same occurrence probably won't happen again. Now we go to the state of California, where there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to start off here with Alaska. I'm going to go to California at the end because there's too much to unpack here. So for the state of Alaska, Alaska has a singular congressional district held by Nick Begich. This district went to the Democrats in 2022, Mary Peltola, because she was running against, Sarah. Now we go to Alaska's House of Representatives. This was a flip for Republicans in 2024 by a narrow 8,000 vote margin. The only reason Mary Peltola was able to win in 2022 was because she was running against Sarah Palin. Paltola is a strong candidate. She will be running for House in 2026, so this won't be that competitive. It's going to be probably likely Republican, I'm thinking, if not closer to safe. Now we go to Nevada. Nevada has 3 competitive districts, all held by relatively long-serving Democratic incumbents. These are not going to be very competitive races, just based on the electoral history. The only competitive district will probably be Susie Lee's district, where she only won by about 10,000 votes, or just over 2%, about 2.5%. So this will be a competitive district, the 3rd district. The other 2 won't be that competitive, and it's important to note that in 2024 was the first time in a long time that Republicans won the generic ballot in terms of the overall House popular vote in Nevada. So I do believe that that will probably be harder to replicate in the future, and even that scenario, all 3 Democratic incumbents held on. So I'm going to say Nevada's probably 2 likely districts and 1 lead district for the Democratic Party. We go to the state of Montana here. The race for this competitive district here, Ryan Zinke, he won by more than many people thought. So I would say that Montana's first is probably a likely Republican district. Now we go to some of the other districts across the United States. The next state here, Colorado, Lauren Boebert will win that district here. This district right now held by Republican Congressman Gabe Evans will be a classic test for 2026. If Evans loses, that shows that Republicans are losing some grip in some of the suburban areas, because this is right outside Denver, and this is a suburban district that stretches upstate to the more rural parts. If Gabe Evans loses this district, that would be a good sign for the Democratic Party. It is about bellwether Yadira Camaravo, who won by less than 1% in 2022, lost by less than 1% in 2024. Very competitive, very interesting district. Right now, I think that Democrats have a slight advantage, just because it does seem as though Democrats have been able to do better and better in some of these suburbs. And also, the Colorado suburbs are not particularly high minority population, the demographic where Democrats are losing support. And thus, I think that Colorado, this district, would go for the Democratic Party. This district over here, the only reason it was considered competitive in 2024 was because in 2022, Lauren Boebert was a bad candidate and almost cost Republicans this district. Now with Jeff Hurd, I think this won't be that competitive, and Adam Frisch was a good candidate. He still lost by 5. It's not going to be that competitive. Arizona, there's 2 competitive districts here. This district, again, will be closer to a bellwether, that being David Schreikert's district. This was a district that was decided by less than 1% in 2022. It was decided by 4 in 2024, though, and also Arizona is a state that has been trending Democratic, but 2024 delivered a pretty substantial rebuke here to the Democratic Party. Trump won the state by nearly 6%. That was not good news for the Democratic Party. Now, it really depends, because Schreiker won the district by 4 in an environment where Trump won the state by 6. So theoretically, if the state goes Democratic, it would be better for the Democratic Party, and that would be true. On the other hand, though, Schreiker has generally overperformed the presidential level as well as the other candidates. It's a tough one. It's also about whether right now I would give it to Schreiker, just because every single time he seems like he's able to hang on by just a little bit, and thus the district will probably be Republican plus less than 1% in my opinion. This district over here, again a very competitive one. Watson Soleimani won by about 3% against Christine Engel, a bit less than that. This will again be a competitive district, but Soleimani again, time and time again, proving that he's able to win by very narrow margins. Christine Engel was not the best candidate in my opinion, but even then, I think this will still be a narrow Republican hold. Now we go to the state of New Mexico. Gabriel Vasquez against Yvette Harrell. Harrell was a former representative, didn't do that well. I think that Gabriel Vasquez will be able to win re-election there, probably by a lead margin. In the state of Nebraska here, this will also be a competitive race. Don Bacon against Tony Vargas. This exact matchup, I believe, has already occurred 3 times. Vargas lost all 3 times, but every single time the margin becomes closer. In 2020, it was like a 5-point margin, a 4-point margin. In 2023, two, I believe it was like a 4-point margin. This time around, it was down to less than a 2% margin, and the district keeps getting bluer despite redistricting making the district redder. So it's going to be a very competitive race. I do believe, however, that Tony Vargas or another Democrat will be able to pull forward this time. The district has consistently trended blue as in the individual precincts. Because of redistricting, it's not an apples to apples comparison. But if you look at the precinct by precinct data, Democrats have been doing better and better overall in this district. I think it's about time that at this point that Don Bacon would end up losing. Angie Craig should be able to win re-election in Minnesota. It was a close race back in 2022, but in 2024, Angie Craig absolutely crushed it. She won by 14. Not going to be that competitive. For Iowa's 3rd and 1st districts here, it's going to be a close one. I think that realistically, Zach Nunn should be able to win in Iowa's 3rd. And Iowa's 1st, though, it's always a very competitive race. I remember in 2020, I believe, Mariette Miller Meeks won by 6 votes against Rita Hart. That was in 2020 when the district was decided by just 6 votes. It took months to recount court cases and stuff. The Democrat there ultimately conceded. In 2022, it wasn't that close. 2024, again, it was decided by just 800 votes. This will, again, probably be a very competitive district in 2026. Mariette Miller Meeks is the ultimate survivor, won 2 of her 3 elections by less than 0.25%. Yet I do not believe she will survive in 2026 because 2024, it was a good environment for the Republicans. Trump won Iowa by 13%. If you're only able to win by 0.2% in that environment, where Trump won the national popular vote, won Iowa by 13, it's going to be hard to win in 2026 when the national environment's going to be a bit worse for the Republicans. It might be better, but right now it looks like it's going to be a bit worse. I think MMM will probably lose re-election. So Wisconsin here, Derek Van Orden, not the most popular incumbent, but this is a Republican plus 6 district, and the partisanship is enough for the Republican Party. As for the state of Illinois here, I do believe this will be a likely Democratic district. I don't think that's too surprising. Democrats gerrymandered the state so that the state would not be that competitive. Now we go to the state of Michigan. Now, there are 3 competitive districts here. I don't believe Michigan's 8 will be too competitive. Christine McDonald-Revette did not incumbent here, won by nearly 30,000 votes. This was expected to be a very competitive race. It wasn't in the end. Don't expect it to be competitive in 2026, where a national environment it will probably be slightly better for a Democratic Party. We go to Michigan 7 here, Tom Barrett. Now that he is the incumbent Republican, he actually underperformed expectations. But because he did win by 3 and he won't be the incumbent, it's hard to see the district flipping. I'll give it as the Republican. And then the district here, held by incumbent John James. The district was less competitive than it was in 2022 when James only won by less than 1%. He is now the incumbent. It's harder to unseat incumbents in more localized races. So it makes sense. It makes more sense for incumbents to lose in Senate races. But House races, it's more of an uncommon occurrence. And thus I think that John James will probably be able to win re-election by a likely margin. Now, I'm just going to go to Texas here so that don't forget about this low district. I don't think it's going to be too competitive. Hispanic voters are trending away from Democrats. And more importantly, I would say that the district is, very rural overall. Another good sign for the Republican Party. As such, it's going to be likely Republican. I do believe the other 2 districts here, though, could be a bit more competitive, especially I think the Texas's 34th district. In fact, I disagree with the initial characterization. This district would be low turnout, but I think Vincent Gonzalez is pretty much on the verge of losing re-election. It's going to be a tilt district. If the national environment's not good for Democrats, this district could actually flip to the Republican Party. Now we go to North Carolina here. This one competitive district, it's going to be razor thin probably. This was a district that voted for Trump. It voted for Don Davis, the incumbent Democrat, by 1.7%. Lori Buckout, I felt like didn't have that strong of an appeal. She wasn't the best candidate to run there. It will be a very competitive district. It just depends on national environment. Democrats has been losing in North Carolina's 1st district, in this part of the district in particular. This part, the more rural African American population there, has been trending away from the Democratic Party. So I think that this could be the year where Republicans win it, but I think that the national environment might be enough to carry the Democrats over, and thus Democrats retain that district. Now we have two competitive districts in the state of Ohio. First off is Ohio's 9th district with Marcy Kaptur. Kaptur really did have a strong challenge after she won the district by 16% against someone who participated in the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol. That was a much easier race for Kaptur. So in 2024, it doesn't seem like she had a very strong challenger. Even then, she was within 2,400 votes of losing, which tells me she's not a very strong incumbent. This time round, with her as a much bigger target, I think the district will flip. Now we go to the other district here with Amelia Skies. This part of the state, Akron in particular, is also trending away from the Democratic Party. I think, realistically, Ohio, Iowa, this part of the state, these states have significantly trended away from the Democratic Party to a point where the states are no longer really that competitive, and Akron in particular, very working class, the type of area I would expect Democrats to make more inroads, and Republicans to make more inroads, and I would say Republicans are favored to win that district. Now we go to a few of the other states in the Northeast before we're going to jump back off to the state of California. Virginia has two competitive districts here. Eugene Vidmich should be able to win re-election as an incumbent. This is a more suburban district, which has been trending blue heavily, so I do expect the Democrats to win there. For Virginia here, the Virginia Beach district, this will also be a competitive race, but I believe that the two-term incumbent Republican there should be able to win re-election, that being Jen Higgins. This race was more competitive than many people thought it was going to be. Out of all of these Republicans expected to win narrowly districts here, this was one of the closest, I believe. Virginia second with Jen Higgins. That being said, I still expect Republicans to win it. It's a district where Democrats need to kind of overperform their usual expectation to win the district, and that's always going to be hard. So that's going to be a lead Republican district. Now we go to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has 4 competitive seats here. I'm going to first off get rid of this district. It used to be Connor Lab's district, and now it's held by Chris DeLuzio. It's a Pittsburgh-based district, and it's pretty liberal, so it's going to be hard for Democrats to end up losing that. I'd say that's likely Democratic. This district right here is held by Scott Perry. He felt a very strong challenge from Janelle Stelson, a moderate TV anchor who's relatively popular in that district, and that caused the margin to really drop from like a 5 to 6% Republican victory down to 1.2%. But now I feel like that in 2026, there won't be as strong of a challenger where Scott Perry would be able to win again. Probably by a larger margin, but if Janelle Stelson runs again in 2026, Scott Perry will be in a fight for his life. He's used to slightly overperforming. He significantly underperformed back in 2024 though, so it really depends. It also depends on national environment. Right now, I give the advantage to Scott Perry, assuming a less high quality Democratic candidate ends up running there. Now we go to the 2 Pennsylvania districts that are more working class. These are both held by Democratic incumbents, Matthew Cartwright in the 8th district and Susan Wild in the 7th district. Both of these were raised within margins. If Democrats won both of those districts, they would have been within 1 seat of holding the House. That didn't happen for Democrats, unfortunately. So now we're really talking about these districts here with Republican incumbents, and with relatively strong Democratic incumbents in 2024, Democrats weren't able to hang on. So it's going to be hard for them to unseat Republican incumbents in 2026, who will have more name recognition and more funds to be able to win. And therefore, I would say both these districts here are lead Republican. They're closer to likely, especially the district previously held by Matt Cartwright, if Matt Cartwright himself does not run for re-election again. Now we go to the Northeast here, where Republicans only really need to win 4 more seats to win House control. Democrats still need 15. Both sides have flipped, I think 2 districts so far, but it's nothing significant. So first we go to the state of New Jersey here. There's 1 competitive district held by Tom Keene Jr. Keene Jr. is a solid candidate, defeats Sue Altman, the Democrat, by 6. I don't think it's going to be that competitive. I don't think Democrats are really going to fund the district as much for the Democratic candidate. That being said, it is noticeable that in 2024, the state was decided only by 6% on the presidential level. And I think Tom Key Jr. kind of underperformed expectations there. So I would say that this district could be more competitive if Democrats find a way to win New Jersey by 15% again. But because I don't think that's going to happen, I'm going to give the advantage to Kim Jr. Now we go to the state of New York, where there's a lot of candidates in a lot of these districts here. First off, New York's 22nd district. Redistricting made this district a lot more Democratic, and Brandon Williams, the Republican, lost by 10%. So it's no close race. Democrats will be able to probably win it again. I would say by either likely or safe margin. If anything, I think it might be safe now with a Democratic incumbent. Now we get to this district over here with Josh Riley. Marcus Monorino was considered very vulnerable. He lost by less than many people expected, but New York only went Democratic by 12%. If the Democrats only win the state by 12 and Democrats still flip the district, I think it's going to be harder here for the Republicans to win, and I would give this to Josh Riley here by probably a 3 to 4% margin. Now we go to district over here, Pat Ryan. Pat Ryan's a pretty solid candidate. Was the only survivor in 2022 on the Democratic level because Democrats essentially got massacred across the state back in 2022. Pat Ryan narrowly held on against Allison Esposito. He won by 14%. Don't think the district will be that competitive in 2026 either. Pat Ryan right now, I'd say he wins the district by a safe margin. On the other hand here, we have Mike Lawler on the New York 17th district. This district was a battle between two representatives, Mike Lawler, the incumbent, and Mondale Jones, the Democratic candidate. This district was expected to be a lot more competitive. New York is trending to the Republican Party, and for those factors, I would give the district right now to the Republican Party by lead margin. Now we go to the two Long Island-based districts. These two districts were both more competitive than the predictors, as in Laura Gillen and Thomas Suozzi were expected to win the districts by a larger margin. That being said, that did never really materialize. Suozzi was expected to win by, I think, more than 10%. He only won by 4, while Laura Gillen was expected to win by about 5, and she won by about 2%. So this is going to be a very competitive state district. These two districts will probably be very competitive if Democrats significantly underperform in Queens, which is definitely possible. But given the national environment here, I would still have to say that this would be two districts that Democrats are expected to win. Now to the 4 Upper New England districts here, all held by Democratic incumbents. Connecticut right now, that will be a very competitive district. The Democratic incumbent there, Janet Hayes, won by 6. And although that's not that impressive of a number, it's still probably good enough for her to win re-election again in 2026. Now we go to the state of New Hampshire here with 2 congressional districts. Both these incumbents have generally been used to be able to overperform their top of the ticket candidates. In this case, if you look at 2024 here, the overall numbers in New Hampshire's 2nd and New Hampshire's 1st reflected roughly a D+7 performance, when Harris won the state by about 3, and that has consistently been what has occurred in both of those two districts over the past few election cycles. So I would say right now that New Hampshire, both of these incumbents are safe, and thus they will both be considered likely Democratic districts. Now we go to the state of Maine, where we see whether a rural kind of a Democrat will be able to hang on to re-election. So Jared Golden has been here for I think for 3 terms. He won in 2018 in a blue wave against Austin Throughout, the former representatives from this district. Against someone else. I forgot who that was, but it was a very competitive race back then. It was very competitive in 2024 as well. In 2026, Jared Golden both has an advantage and a disadvantage. His advantage is that this election would not be held in a presidential election year cycle, so he would not have to face Donald Trump being on the top of the ballot in this congressional district. The bad news is, as time goes on, the district becomes redder and redder and redder, and that will be difficult for Golden to eventually overcome. That being said, in 2026, even though the district is becoming more Republican, I think the Trump factor being out of this race will significantly help Jared Golden, because there's kind of a down ballot effect, right? If you check Trump's name at the top of the ballot, you're probably going to check a Republican on the bottom of the ballot. But if there's not Trump running, you might not choose to vote at all. So that, I think, will help Jared Golden, even though the district has become progressively more conservative. I will give the district right now to Golden. And now that leaves me with 7 congressional districts across the state of California, and this will decide who wins congressional control. Let's start off with this district over here, Adam Gray and John Durante. This has been a very, very competitive district for the last 2 election cycles. Adam Gray won in 2024 by less than 0.1%. John Durante won in 2022 by less than 0.1%, I believe. So this has been a very competitive district all throughout, and will be very competitive in 2026 as well. But now that Adam Gray is the incumbent, he has a bigger advantage. Not to mention 2026, I think the national environment will be better than it was for Democrats in 2024. The question is here again, turnout. If you look at California's 5th district as an example, there's 370,000 votes here. In California's 13th, despite being a more competitive district, there's only about 60% of turnout. We go to another district. California's 18th also has relatively low turnout, but it's still higher than the 13th. You go to the 19th here. The district has like almost double the turnout as California's 13th. So turnout really matters if it's a Democrats or Republicans turning out. Ultimately, though, turnout here is about 30%. So if more Democrats turn out, it's going to be better for Democrats. If more Republicans turn out, it's going to be better for the Republicans. I think, though, however, this is a district that voted for Joe Biden by like 10. So I would say that Democrats are still narrowly favored, and thus Democrats will win that district, in my opinion, probably by a tilt margin. Now we go to the district over here, held by David Valadao. This was a district that voted for Biden by 10, voted for like Harris by 2 or something. Rudy Salas lost it by 6. And again, this is an even lower turnout district compared to California's 13th. It really matters who's turning out. And in a midterm year, you might expect the Democrats to turn out more because you see a lot of energy to protest against Trump, and thus probably a lot of energy to protest against Republican congressional candidates. That being said, David Valadao is extremely moderate, voted to impeach Trump in 2021. So it doesn't seem as though Democrats have as much energy to oppose him. Salas was not the best candidate, but he lost by more than 6%, which suggests that Democrats are not that good in that district. They're not in a great position, and thus I would have to say that the district right now probably favors David Valadao, the Republicans, and thus it's a leading Republican district. Now we go to a district here held by George Whitesides, previously held by Mike Garcia. Garcia was similarly considered as vulnerable as David Valadao, but Valadao won by 6 and Garcia lost by nearly 3%. This was a district where we saw in 2024. I remember seeing the votes coming in one batch after another. It just made it impossible for Mike Garcia to win. He lost by about 8,000 votes. The question is, will Garcia run again? I don't think it really matters. Whitesides seems decently well liked, and he does give that younger vibe, which is probably good for a candidate in this type of a district. Garcia, now that Whitesides have more name recognition, I think it's going to be harder for Garcia to win re-election. So for California's District 27th, even if Garcia runs again, I think he'll lose. If it's another Republican, they'll probably lose more badly. I think Whitesides will probably win here by a lead margin. Now there's going to be 4 districts here. Republicans need 1, Democrats need all 4 to win. Albeit Democrats only need 2 of the 4 districts to have a quote-unquote improvement. The first district here is California's 47th, between Democrat Dave Mid and Republican Scott Ball. Ball ran in 2022 against a relatively well-known Democratic Congresswoman, that being Katie Porter. In 2024, though, the district will probably be more competitive. The 2024, Scott Ball had a golden opportunity to flip this district because this was a non-incumbent district. There was no incumbent. Mid still won. I think Republicans are going to struggle to win this district again. I think Dave Mid will probably win, albeit it's going to be a pretty competitive race, probably within about 3 to 5%. Now we go to California's 45th. Derek Trent against Michelle Steele. Steele lost by, again, about 600 votes. It's very competitive. The issue is now that Derek Tran's the incumbent, it's going to be harder for Republicans to win it, and Michelle Steele was already a very strong incumbent. Now that Michelle Steele lost in 2024, it's going to be hard to win in a district where Kamala won by a few points and then Biden won by double digits, and thus this district right now leading Democratic. Now you have 2 districts left. This district here in California's 40th would be very problematic for the Democratic Party. Young Kim won by 10. She's very popular. Not to mention, this was a Trump district in both 16, 20, and 24. So it's going to be very hard for Democrats to overrun Biden's 30% victory across California. I do believe that this will be a district Republicans win by a likely margin, and with that, Republicans win the House again. Now we have the final district here between Ken Calvert and Will Rollins. It was a competitive district. It was decided by about 12,000 votes. Ken Calvert is not well liked. This was a district Trump won in 2020, and yet Calvert's only won by 4. That's not the best margin at all. That being said, Will Rollins has had like 2 tries, and he got closer in 2024. Even with that said, 12,000 votes is not easy to overcome, and Calvert is in a Republican-friendly district, so it's going to be harder to unseat a Republican incumbent. Although he's not the most popular, I think it's going to be enough for him to win again in 2026, making the Republicans at 219, Democrats at 216. Now if you look at the 2024 map, you see that Democrats made a net gain of 2. Now Democrats are going to make another net gain of 1. They're 2 seats out from the majority, but nonetheless, the Republicans do end up winning a majority in my prediction. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.